All right. Welcome, everyone. Come on in. We're so excited to have you here for Bite-Sized Data Fundamentals, K12 IT Trends, Interoperability, Procurement, and Cybersecurity. We have the slogan for Bite-Sized Data Fundamentals is big topics in a bite-sized format, and that could be so true today. We have a big topic, lots to go through, so we are going to jump right in. As you are joining, please introduce yourself in the chat. Tell us your name, your organization, and where you're joining us from. This is our agenda. I'm just going to give us a quick introduction and welcome to our speakers today, and then they are going to walk you through interoperability, procurement, and cybersecurity, all the results of the 2022 EdTech Leadership Survey from COSIN. And then we will have a Q&A at the end. As we are going through the presentation, please throw your questions in the chat. We will address them as they come up through the presentation and right at the end. There's also a little Q&A button you will see where you can put your questions as well. Our speakers today, Caroline Kazmierski from EdFi Alliance, the Director of Marketing and Communications. We have Paula Malin, Project Director at COSIN, and Adela Dickey, retired CTO from Northwest Allen County Schools in Indiana. They'll be walking you through these results, and we're very excited to have them all here today. Before we get into it all, I want to quick shout out the Project Unicorn Pledge. Signing the pledge is for school network leaders and EdTech vendors, and it indicates a dedication to advancing data interoperability in your K-12 EdTech tools. It's free to sign up. It gets you early access to webinars and other resources like this, as well as technical assistance. These links will be in the chat, so please sign up. Additionally, if you're an EdTech vendor here, please apply for the Project Unicorn Interoperability Certification. This is a free certification offered in partnership with Digital Promise that ranks the interoperability of your EdTech tool. You'll receive a really cool badge like the one you see here on the screen, ranking the interoperability of your tool from 1 to 4. You'll also receive technical assistance from Unicorn folks to get that score moving in the right direction. So another link that'll be in the chat, please check that out. It's free to all Project Unicorn Pledge signatories. And finally, to make sure we're all on the same page, Project Unicorn is all about data interoperability, which we define as the seamless, secure, and controlled exchange of data between applications. And now I'm going to pass things over to Paula to get us started. Paula.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. I guess we'll just get right into the EdTech Leadership Survey results. Just a few notes about the survey. It was conducted earlier this year, began in January, ended at the end of February. We had over 1,500 survey participants. We asked them 47 questions and we covered 10 functional areas. Obviously, for this brief webinar, we're going to focus on the areas regarding cybersecurity, interoperability, and procurement. But before we close, I will add a link where you can download the full report. So interoperability, as we know, for schools infrastructure to work effectively, efficiently, and securely, interoperability is really essential. We think that key to interoperability is contained in the word itself, ability, the ability to keep data secure, ensure data quality, roster students day one, readily access data, reallocate resources, and the ability to give your teachers and your IT department their evenings and Sundays back. With 83%, single sign-on is the most implemented interoperability initiative, including a third that have fully implemented it. As one CTO pointed out, addressing SSO has an immediate impact for all stakeholders, not the least of which is the IT department itself, because it cuts down on the majority of help requests and some complaints. So it's a really good first start, but it only scratches the surface of the work that needs to be done. And while a majority of districts have implemented data interoperability and analytics and content interoperability, only 8% have fully implemented any of those.
I'll just add here, a lot of folks start with single sign-on. I would encourage people trying to get started with interoperability, go for the low-hanging fruit, whichever area of this kind of list works best for what you have in place already. Start with that. You don't necessarily have to start with one thing or another, just get started. And then once you can start showing the value to your users and to your administrators, it helps the next steps come along more smoothly.
I would just add to that, Adela, that's such a good point. And because it is a journey and a kind of, there's some sea change that is represented here, starting small and getting a quick win and getting data, connected data flowing in real time can be so powerful to really show all of the stakeholders in your organization the value of connecting these data points. So starting small is a great tip.
Just start.
Well, and the good news is that 80% of districts reporting that they are taking steps to advance interoperability. Educating stakeholders is the most common method employed, with 42% educating IT staff, 40% educating administrators, and 39% educating instructional leaders. 28% of districts convey interoperability requirements to vendors, and more than a quarter are modifying their procurement processes to ensure that there is IT involvement.
I like this list. It almost ends up looking like a steps to follow, where to start. You do have to have your IT staff on board, of course. They're the ones who've got to make it happen. They may already be pushing for it, so that those folks may be an easy win. As you get them on board and ready to start moving, then it's easier to start showing your administrators and other instructional leaders. But it doesn't have to be, it's not lockstep. So you don't have to have all of your IT staff fully on board before you start talking about it to the other folks. It's kind of a hit them on all fronts. And then if you have someone that is more receptive in your district, or someone who already gets it, because a lot of folks will see this just intuitively, start with them. And just get the ball rolling wherever you can. And then of course the vendors, getting them on board is an ongoing process as well.
And I'll just add to that, what we say at EdFi is that you really want to, if you're trying to go down this journey of implementing interoperability in your organization, what you really want to have is a dream team. You've got a technical leader and an instructional leader. And when you put those two people together, and maybe you on the phone or on the call are one of those two people, you really need the two folks, because the technical person is the one that's going to be doing the technical work behind it. But then the instructional leader is the person and that represents the users of once you have all of your data connected. So that's really important that you have a counterpart on either side.
Just wanted to share the full response chart, and it shows all the steps that the districts are taking to advance data interoperability. And as you can see, at the top, most districts are really at their early stages. There's just an awareness and education. Just note that only 13% of districts are currently adopting data standards. So we hope and expect that to increase.
And I also, on that slide, that really speaks to what I was saying earlier. There is some significant change, right? You're not just buying a new widget for your school district. You're really thinking about your IT architecture and the plumbing in a different way. And so this list is, again, to Adela's point earlier, it's almost a list of things that you're going to need to do in order to really embrace and think about interoperability as a key way to get benefits from your data flowing into your organization and into your school district.
Yeah, and there are multiple tasks, and you need to do multiple things to get there. When it comes to barriers, we asked respondents about the hurdles that were preventing them from improving data with interoperability in their districts. And the top barrier was a lack of understanding by instructional leaders. You know, anecdotally, we hear that the IT department is really the NO department. Teachers are looking for, you know, tools that can really engage their students. They are not looking at resources with a lens towards interoperability or even an understanding of interoperability. And so they can get frustrated, you know, if they don't understand why they can't use their favorite tool.
Paul, if I can jump in, I think this points back again, though, to my point of get a couple of things working, get a couple of even small wins, and then it's easier to explain to the other instructional leaders and the teachers why it is you're doing what you're doing. You can point to, you know, how when you log into this program, it automatically logs you into the other one also, and you don't have to have that second step with your little kids. That's what I'm trying to get accomplished with these other programs that you're looking to adopt. So if you will work with us so that we can get jumping into procurement, we can make it, it helps with the understanding for them if they can see examples of what it is you're trying to do.
Again, here's a full list, and while the lack of understanding by instructional leaders was the most common barrier cited, there were many factors that can serve as obstacles to districts seeking to increase data interoperability. So budget constraints, lack of staff expertise, complexity of the work, and limited staff capacity also appeared at the very top of that list. You know, when COSN goes into districts to conduct their, you know, peer reviews, it really doesn't find any IT leader that questions the value of interoperability. They really cite the complexity of conducting all their systems, and then really just the staff capacity, lack thereof, that gets in the way. A contributing factor to the lack of staff time is the expanding scope of responsibilities. This quote is from one of the survey respondents that highlights what IT leaders are having to contend with, not to mention the additional challenges that they face during a pandemic. Everything is moving towards a network solution, alarm system, doors, even HVAC are now the responsibility of the IT department because it's networked, but our staff has not increased to keep up with the demand. And, you know, Adela and I have been on, you know, a peer review together. And at that one, you know, the IT leader pointed out that even the management of the phone system was now his responsibility because the district moved to voice over IP. To give you an idea of the staffing issues, the top areas where districts are understaffed have direct impact on teaching and learning. 52% said they are understaffed when it comes to providing instructional support around classroom use, 51% in providing remote support to students and families, and 46% reported insufficient staff for integrating technology in the classroom. By creating more interoperable digital ecosystems, districts could enable them to reallocate staffing to address understaffed areas, and we think an effective way of achieving that is through the procurement process.
I'll just add to this, and what we are hearing from the EdFi community is that some of our school districts, right, our LEAs that are in the EdFi community already are working, their staffs are, as you see from this list, already overworked. There's already so many things that they're having to do and to manage. And maintaining the connections of many different applications that have been layered on top of these in IT departments over time. That's full people's jobs, right? Just maintaining those connections. What interoperability does is allows you to take a step back, connect all of those things in a seamless way so that you can get the data out and you're not spending your time, you're no longer spending your time maintaining the connections, but rather pulling the data in a seamless way so that you can get the data out and you can actually use the data, not just spend your time munging the data together. That's already been figured out. And what I think all of us on the line are trying to do is help our school districts across the country recognize that, wrap their minds around a different way to approach IT and the architecture so that we can actually get to the data to do something really great with it, to have transparency in our schools around how are we using the data, what kind of information is the data exposing for us, how can we then fix those problems. And so if our IT departments are so overburdened and they're just doing this physical maintaining of all these systems, they don't have the opportunity to really look at the data and and even see the data and to do something very powerful with it. So all of this to say, the larger goal is exactly why people get into education in the first place, right? Is to have an impact on student performance and educators, and all of this adds up to be very powerful. So even though we're talking on this level, I just wanted to kind of share that the larger perspective of why it's so important that we get out of this maintaining this daily, connections things, and we'll look at it a little bit more holistically.
Yeah, that's really the end goal. And then how we think we can start to achieve that is through the procurement process. Getting IT leaders involved in selection of digital content is really key. And we find that more than half of respondents indicated that there is heavy involvement in the procurement of digital instructional materials, including 19% who said that they serve as the final decision maker on making any purchases. District IT leadership play the essential role in determining how and if curriculum software and related assets can be integrated into a digital ecosystem. And adoption decisions, issues such as interoperability, data security, are as important as the efficacy of the instructional materials. They're really not that separate. District IT leaders often have a more comprehensive picture of what curriculum materials are being used throughout the school system, and their insights are important in terms of long-term planning as well as licensing renewals.
I'd like to partly speak to the 26% that are either not involved at all or only provided input when asked. I hope if you're in the 23, that's only when you're asked that you're asked every time to provide input, because it becomes all of the rest of the work that you're trying to do to improve or to get to an interoperability state and improve the learning and get to where Caroline was talking, that the technology can be advancing your educational goals, but not be in the way of trying to achieve your educational goals. You have to have input on what's being purchased. I think a lot of vendors and a lot of providers now are becoming much more aware of this and are trying to work with us, but there are still pockets out there where they're not. And you need to be part of that team at minimum that's reviewing those to say, this may be a great tool, but we're not going to be able to make it work with our system without a ton of extra work, or not be able to make it work at all. So you've got to be in on that conversation. And again, back to the quick wins and starting to show them some of the value helps them remember, oh, maybe we should contact IT folks about this before we get too far down the road.
I just wanted to share some quotes from the survey respondents themselves. It really speaks to the importance of the procurement process. Data needs to be actionable to be useful. Integration is hard when silo means lock-in. Decisions made without technology involvement lead to data inconsistency and security issues. And standards and technology adoption support cost-effective and consistent experience and teaching and learning for all the teachers and students. When it comes to free tools, a large majority of districts have processes in place for reviewing and allowing the introduction of these tools into their digital ecosystem. Requiring IT approval and developing approved app lists are best practice. But it's important to go beyond explaining what teachers can use and really explain the why and why there are some tools they can't use. Teachers do not want to put their students at risk. And so while they may be disappointed if they can't use a specific tool, teachers will much more readily accept a decision if they understand why there's a process in place for approving these free tools. Cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is the top priority for IT leaders. It has been ranked the #1 priority since we've been doing this, since the survey in 2018. This high-ranking priority for cybersecurity aligns also with districts' degree of self-assessed cyber preparedness. So we think that by keeping cybersecurity as a priority, that's how districts feel that they're staying prepared. The most frequently used methods for improving cybersecurity are IT staff training with 65%, and end user training 63%. While it would be better if these percentages were both 100%, it's a good sign that the percentage is closely aligned. It suggests that most districts recognize that cybersecurity is not just a purview of the IT department. Most districts, 55%, employ the best practices of offsite backups, and 54% encourage staff to upgrade their passwords, which is another best practice. Only a fifth of districts have a full-time equivalent employee dedicated to network security. This means that cybersecurity protection is a part-time responsibility in a large majority of school districts. In lieu of a full-time cybersecurity position, districts address cybersecurity in a variety of ways. A third of districts include the responsibility as part of another job, virtually the same as last year's results. The results for ad hoc and other also closely mirror last year's results. However, significant change is seen in the reduction of the shared responsibility approach in which cybersecurity functions are carried out by more than one employee. This year, only 34% structured cybersecurity management in this way, compared to 53% the prior year. More districts have implemented outsourcing strategies instead. Outsourcing is used by 21% of districts, 7 to public service organization, 14 to private sector provider. In 2021, just 6% of districts outsource. As cyber attacks become more sophisticated, greater expertise is needed to combat them, and the demand for those skills also increases. Globally, there's a cybersecurity skills shortage, with more cybersecurity jobs opening than qualified candidates to fill them. As school districts will be hard-pressed to offer the salaries that compete with private sector for the small pool of cybersecurity expertise, we expect that the use of outsourcing solutions will grow.
I'd like to point out that part of the reason that cybersecurity belongs in a conversation about interoperability is the advantages of having more of your apps aligned and interoperability running well helps with your security. Fewer passwords you have to track, fewer passwords your users have to track for when you're talking about the single sign-on. Also, when you have the flow of data, if those things are aligned and you know where your data is going, who has it, it's easier to monitor. I know we've had a lot of programs in the past that came in and they said, yeah, we want to connect to your student information system. We're going to pull all these different pieces of information. And it's like, wait a minute, you don't need all of that. I only need you to have just this basic information. So monitoring those kinds of connections also improves your privacy policies and your cybersecurity position, and to keep on top of that.
Yeah, and Chris Mogia, hopefully I'm saying that right, who is joining us. He's just made this exact point, Adela, that you just said. He writes, it's too bad single sign-on, and I think he's using interoperability as a proxy, single sign-on as a proxy for that, but is seen more as a security strategy. And it absolutely is. When you're away from managing all of those different connections and doing all the daily munging of all that together, you can have a better look and a see into exactly what your infrastructure looks like, and it is completely organized in a way that is more secure. And you own you're having your own data. It's not in the hands of a different or multiple other vendors. And then you as a school district are at the mercy of their security processes or breaches. So there's a lot of value of having interoperability as part of the cybersecurity discussion. I agree with that.
Unfortunately, another aspect of cybersecurity is cybersecurity insurance, which a majority of districts have, and a 62% with another 3% planning to purchase. And having cyber insurance is another best practice, as cybersecurity experts really advise it's a matter of when, not if, an organization will experience an incident. Of those with insurance, 38% are covered as part of a comprehensive umbrella policy. Almost a quarter of districts purchase separate cybersecurity policies. As school districts have become major targets of attacks, insurers often have best practice prerequisites for purchase and for payout, such as requirements for multi-factor authentication, cybersecurity training for staff members, and written cybersecurity governance policies with action steps. Also note that insurers don't want districts to actually publicize that they have coverage because they feel that makes them more of an inviting target for a cyber attacker. So we have a Q&A session, but I just wanted to give you, this is the link to download the full report. It's got 48 pages worth of data that you'll find interesting, that covers what a little bit more than what we covered today, as well as all those other functional areas. So I believe someone's been monitoring the chat. There's some questions there.
Yes, we have. We have a question from Susan. Susan wanted to know, can you explain the difference between data interoperability and content interoperability?
I think I might be able to take that one. So when we think about data interoperability and EdFi, we're thinking about all of the systems like your SIS, right? We're thinking about all the various assessments and this, like the reports and the grades that are coming out of there, the grade book. We're thinking about the financial aspect of running a school district, all of those data points that if you see it all together, you can, as well as attendance monitoring, things like that. And when you see it all together, you can look at trends over time. You can drill down to specific schools within your district. You can look at certain students, and you can then make choices to help the student support them in a way that's needed at that time in real time. When I at least think about content interoperability, and Adela, you might be able to speak more to this, it's more of those state standards on curriculum and making sure that those are all kind of integrated on the back end. Adela, do you have more on that? That's not something that EdFi specifically works in. We're more on the data piece of it.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. That sounds like an accurate description of that. Might also think about it, I guess, is we had textbook, and I guess it's more just a LTI pulling the content into like our learning management system. I don't know if that would be considered content interoperability, perhaps a way to get them to speak to each other.
Yeah, having content in silos is awkward for teachers and students. You want to be able to not be locked into one provider. You want to be able to pull best of breed wherever the content is.
Excellent. Well, we are right on time here, folks. So that was incredible. I have to thank all of our presenters for all of that information. I want to thank all of you in the chat for participating and for attending today. If you have additional questions, please, these are our Twitter handles. Please tweet at us. We'd love to keep the conversation going. We will also be following up with these slides as well as a recording to this webinar. And we will also be following up with information about a future webinar on this topic where we will have more time to discuss the results of this survey, and we'll have several panelists, and it'll be really, really fun. So keep on the lookout for information about that. Once again, thank you so much to our presenters. Thank you to all of you, and we will see you at the next one. Thanks so much.